anti-vaccine rally in Melbourne, and we're here to ask one very important question. Does anybody in this rally know what the fuck they're talking about? Are you a doctor?
No.
Are you a doctor?
I'm not a doctor, no.
No, I'm not a doctor.
Are you a doctor or a medical professional?
Nope.
No, you just...
I'm in natural therapies.
Are you a doctor?
No, not at all.
No, you're not. But you have done your research.
Oh, my word, absolutely.
Yeah. Was that research part of like a 6-year doctorate's degree or more just Google? So you're actually against vaccines for animals. Are you a vet?
No.
Are you a doctor? Are you a doctor? No. Are you a doctor, man? No. Are you a doctor? No. Oh, that's true. You are right. There wouldn't be a doctor here. My mistake. About 50 people just ran a red here. So anti-vax and anti-traffic light signs as well. So what was your name, sorry?
My name's Jeff.
My name's Lewis. Nice to meet you, Jeff.
Nice to meet
Now, Jeff, are you here to protest anti-vax or are you from the Matrix?
I'm here to raise education and bring attention to people that are malinformed and believe vaccines are safe when there's no actual evidence to prove that they're safe or effective.
So you've taken the red pill, I assume. Was there anything else that you would like to say?
Once you give up your liberty for security, what you end up with is tyranny. And what their government is proposing is medical tyranny at its finest.
It's taken a while and the government's making quite a show of it, but for the first time, Italian police officers are being vaccinated against COVID. They, along with the country's teachers, have been moved up the priority list, but with two big caveats: only if they're under 55 and only with the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine. But in a development becoming all too common across Europe, their representatives now complain that they're being fobbed off with a second-class option. We thought we should have been given the vaccine with the greatest efficacy, he said, the greatest percentage of protection and coverage that is available. And by that he means the Pfizer or Moderna vaccines that were today being given to over 80-year-olds at Rome's biggest vaccine centre. The European regulator and the World Health Organization have said that all three vaccines can be used on anyone, but that advice is being ignored in many countries, creating a hierarchy of vaccines, and with it, considerable resentment. Of course, it was European governments who first angrily demanded greater supplies of the AstraZeneca vaccine, but then began to undermine it. Against the advice of the European regulator, Germany and France said only for the under 65s, Italy here even younger than that. It could be argued that governments did more to undermine the credibility of AstraZeneca than any anti-vax movement could have done.
I went there, completely sold out. Toys R Us is sold out in 3 minutes. As soon as the store opened, it was sold out.
It's not toilet paper or Lysol wipes. It's Pokemon cards.
It's like the 90s again. Everybody wants to collect cards. There's money in it, you know.
Collector and YouTuber Adam George runs a Facebook page for collectors to buy and trade. Hearing about stores selling out, even boxes of cards being bought and sold at higher prices.
Either sealed in the packs or to sell for more money, like that Charizard. People are on eBay, it's $700 to $1,000.
What those in the collectors industry say they're seeing is people with more time during the pandemic to dust off their old deck, finding they have cards that might be worth some money, and then they just have the itch to catch them all.
In rediscovering your cards, you rediscover value, and once people rediscover value, things change.
Wayne Wagner says everything in his store of collectibles and trading cards has gotten a new market in the past year. But Pokemon, some high-value sales along with new cards being released.
You know, I've been doing this for over 30 years, and I think it's the values getting thrown around right now that is really just surprising me. Just when you think you've heard it all. You know, as I mentioned, a Pokemon box, one of the original boxes, going for $400,000.
This was the lineup when they got new product Saturday.
Everybody's looking to buy the new packs, the new boxes, and the chance of pulling that new $500 or $800 Charizard card.
Oh my God, yes.
Which is something Adam George did this week.
But lo and behold, I pulled that card, and the Charizard's right there. So I'm pretty happy about that. I'll be sending that off for grading, and, you know, it'll stay in my personal collection.
Look at that card.
The Ontario government says it's aware that its stockpile of personal protective equipment might include counterfeit N95 masks. A memo sent out, the ministry in Ontario asks partners to review inventory lot codes in case they somehow receive fake masks. There's no information on how many counterfeit masks were recovered or where they were found, but Ontario's Health Minister, Christine Elliott, says it's a small number compared to the overall stock, so that's good news. She does say an investigation is now underway.
And Quebec is our focus first for this hour as we look live there at the National Assembly in Quebec City, where the provincial government is moving ahead on plans for an immunity passport, digital proof given to people who get the We got that first confirmation yesterday from Quebec officials. They are considering this.
Yeah, indeed. Manitoba mentioned this as well. Heather, this is a situation where in an effort to get the economies moving, there is a suggestion that perhaps a vaccine passport might be the way to go, whether or not international travel into this country, intra-provincial travel potentially, but also within certain industries. In other words, where you have a workforce that could be endangered by this, everyone has a vaccine passport, and then they show that to be able to be allowed to work. Now, issues around that, but first, let's listen to the Quebec Health Minister.
I don't see why we could not have, as I mentioned earlier, what we call the QR code, that we have on our boarding pass when we fly. So I think it's just normal that we go there. I think in preparation for that, we ask our IT people, but also on public health, what are the conditions that we could have to make sure that when you're being issued a QR code, you're really vaccinated, and that can be quite helpful.
Now, he went on to say he admitted that it wasn't a fully formed idea, suggesting perhaps he spoke a little too soon. Still, though, the opposition, Quebec Solidaire, coming out and saying this could be potentially discriminatory. All this around potentially individuals who, for whatever reasons, because of their age, potentially, because of the industry they work in, could be discriminated against. Also, we're talking about what amounts to personal medical information also being put out there. When asked about this idea when it first came up not long ago, Public Health Agency of Canada didn't have those concerns in particular, but their concerns were more medical around the fact that, let's face it, we don't know a lot about these vaccines yet in terms of 100% efficacy over a long period of time. We're not sure what it means entirely, and that's why they have their concerns at this stage. Yeah, the idea of showing that you've been vaccinated for something, not unheard of. In fact, for children to go to school, issues around that. Of course, children not yet receiving COVID-19 vaccinations. If you want to go to a country where yellow fever is a concern, and that's everywhere from Barbados to Bhutan, they don't want you importing it. You have to have a little yellow card if you're traveling there. Boris Johnson's looking at this in the UK. The European Union met yesterday on this and talked for 5 hours. Angela Merkel coming out of that meeting and saying, we'll do everything possible to allow for the free movement of goods and allow commuters to get to work, but this obviously requires additional safety measures such as tests and so on. Still, though, some suggestion there. Israel has it for people going even to movies and restaurants.
Hi, everyone. If you're back again, you may have watched my last video on how overtaxed and overwhelmed the death system in Los Angeles is right now. From the hospital morgues, to the coroners, to removal drivers, to funeral homes, to crematories, to cemeteries. Is it getting any better? Is the nightmare ending? Has your last video had any effect? Well,
hospitalizations are on the decline.
The chance for another surge in California is real.
Less than 3% of the population has been fully vaccinated.
The supply of COVID vaccine doses allotted to LA County for use is in extremely short supply.
Get as many people vaccinated as quickly as we possibly can.
We can't move fast enough.
Now, by pure numbers, daily new cases are falling, and new hospitalization numbers are falling. But there is a lag time from new cases to death. So deaths are still, as health officials have said, uncomfortably high. Yes, uncomfortably high. That is certainly one way of putting it. Also, we don't know if cases are going to spike again after Super Bowl parties, Valentine's Day, and with the possibility of new Southern California variants because, of course. And even when we get to less people dying, which is my greatest hope, our death care systems are still backed up after almost 2 months of this relentless onslaught, backed up deeply, profoundly. So many people still can't afford these funeral bills and have to wait a month, to multiple months for burial. We can't even schedule a viewing or a witness cremation until the end of March. There are just too many people that need them. On one hand, having this platform gives me the ability to talk to various government officials, California Emergency Management, DMORT, the media. But the most disheartening part of the last 2 weeks has been that even with more information from the horse's mouth, I wouldn't have changed a single thing that I said in my last video. My conclusions remain the same. These folks seem well-intentioned, but simultaneously very well aware that funeral homes need help and that families need help. They believe that the biggest private funeral homes will find a way to bring in huge refrigerated trucks to cover their absent butts and take in all the bodies, and if that means thousands of extra dollars in costs per family, so be it. More than one person in power has suggested to me and to the owner of my crematory that this is a business opportunity, and we have a choice whether or not we want to step up and make the money, like we're selling fidget spinners in the spring of 2017. On a very personal level, I am proud of the way that we have handled this. The way we've worked with our crematory and cemeteries, obtained more storage, built relationships with people in the hospitals, brought new people onto our team, created new systems for having 5 times the normal amount of families in our care. And that's only 5 times because we've had to turn half of the people who need us away, which remains crushing. But we've met the moment as best as we can every day, while trying to keep everything professional, compassionate, spirits up. But at the same time, once again, there are people out there whose actual expertise and job this is, mass fatality experts. Not me, I'm now just an unexpected enthusiast. Didn't choose this hobby, it chose me. And because of my first video, I've been able to hear from these actual experts who remind us that there are plans in place for events like this, and how they have tried to set these plans in motion, and how they have tried to work with the government, and how they have been ignored. About a week ago, I found this article in the LA Times from 2005, that's 16 years ago, about the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. They were unprepared for that disaster in so many ways, as we all remember, but, quote, dealing with mass casualties was one thing for which state and federal agencies had a fully developed plan. There was just one problem. When the storm struck, it turned out that no one could agree on who should be performing the most basic task of all, collecting the bodies. The article goes on to predict, if that first part wasn't chilling enough, that having plans in place at the federal and state level for mass death may, quote, lull officials into a false sense of security and lead to even more shocking failures. The plans don't help you if you don't do the plan. Or admit that you need to do the plan because you don't want to admit that you're the kind of place that needs the plan.
Telltale footprints in the snow.
This is actually good right now. Apparently this lane had hundreds of rats.
Fewer rats here, but elsewhere, it's a different story.
Huge increase. Our best years ever in residential.
Since the start of the pandemic, Dale Kurt's pest control company has had a 20% bump in calls in Toronto.
People have said they've lived there for 25, 30 years and never once seen a rat, and now there's literally hundreds around those areas, and you're seeing them as you're walking down the sidewalk.
In Montreal, another company, Skedaddle, says its calls are up 30%. Pest control is an essential service, and it's growing.
There was a job opening, and I just kind of jumped on it.
Claudio Siciliano lost his job in the restaurant industry. He says pest control isn't that big a leap.
Reassuring people, making sure that they feel comfortable, that we're going to take care of them.
The City of Montreal says overall complaints about rats are up 9.5%. In Vancouver, they're up 7%. Biologists say it's not necessarily because there are more rats, it's because they've switched up their turf.
It would make intuitive sense that they would move from highly commercial areas with a lot of restaurant food waste as a food resource to more residential areas where people are hunkering down and preparing their own food.
He says rooting them out after the pandemic won't be easy. And with spring coming, it's about to get worse.
This is when all the babies are born, so our call volumes, are going to go up even further.
Not just rats, other pest populations are poised to explode. Less traffic during lockdown meant less roadkill last year.
There's going to be a real boom of wildlife population as well as rodents, mice and rats.
Good news for him, costly for homeowners.
Edmonton police insist there was only one real incident at a Saturday rally on legislature grounds in the city, where hundreds of demonstrators showed up to protest against public health measures linked to COVID-19. Police arrested one person. The event was advertised for more than a month on social media. Some protesters carried lit torches, symbols linked prominently to white supremacy. Historically, and as recently as 2017, during a white power rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, where one counter-protester was killed. Experts say it's tricky to arrest someone for hate crimes based on carrying torches, but police have other options.
Symbol, that sign, that's not acceptable in the context because we feel it's going to provoke further impacts and really damage public safety in terms of safely gathering in a protest setting.
The police union says 4 members were punched and swarmed at the demonstration, but the force says the event unfolded largely peacefully and respectfully. Meanwhile, politicians such as Mayor Don Iveson are not mincing their words.
I have zero tolerance for hate speech, and I'm quite confident that Edmontonians have zero tolerance for hate speech.
Alberta Premier Jason Kenney also condemned the presence of bigoted groups while recognizing the right to peacefully demonstrate against public health measures. Edmonton police say they're still investigating.
Watch as the suspected shoplifter makes his escape. One final blast of bear spray as he leaves.
The individual came right out this door and around the corner.
It happened at This London Drugs in the heart of downtown Vancouver, and in this case, it was stolen vitamins.
The disturbing part of it is since the pandemic began, we've seen a real expansion in the violence in shoplifting.
He says COVID has acted as a crime funnel, concentrating the problem in stores that are still open. In fact, there have been 250 violent thefts in the city in the past month alone, and a combined $50,000 in merchandise stolen. Over the course of their 4-week investigation, Vancouver police arrested 130 offenders and recommended 268 criminal charges.
They terrorized employees, sometimes young female clerks who were in the stores by themselves. They used weapons, they threatened, they intimidated anybody who stood in their way.
He had a knife in his hand and threatened me.
At this downtown IGA, violent thefts are up 50% since the start of the pandemic. It's become so common, staff are now dealing with at least one confrontation per day.
Our store manager has been chased around the store with a syringe. We've had knives pulled, hammers, batons, all variety of weapons, bear spray many times. And that never used to happen. We never used to see that.
These people, based on some of the descriptives, are chronic offenders that
BC's former Solicitor General says the pandemic and the opioid crisis have combined to make an existing problem worse.
Many of these people are drug addicted. Many of these people have mental health issues. Now, when you take the convergence of those issues with the pandemic and the need for them to support themselves, it's not surprising we have this particular spike.
A spike in violent thefts that may be too complex for a quick fix.
This has been a Dog in a Bonnet production, 2021.